I'm here with director Michael Schultz. We are celebrating your incredible body of work here on TCM during Black History Month. Thank you, Michael.
It's great to be here and to be talking with you again.
So we're going to watch Which Way Is Up. This is a film starring Richard Pryor in multiple roles, but in the central one, he plays a worker who is sort of enticed accidentally by the labor union movement and then has this kind of multiple life that he's living as a result.
It's really a film about a person who gives up his values for the sake of rising economically.
Absolutely. So you've worked with Richard Pryor quite a bit. He makes an unforgettable cameo in Car Wash. You did Grease Lightning together, Bustin' Loose together. How did you and Richard Pryor connect?
It was through the Black Godfather, Clarence Avant. Clarence Avant and David Picker were trying to get a movie made. Clarence brought me out to LA from New York to meet Richard Pryor, who they wanted to set up as the star of this film. But ultimately, I was in theater and I didn't really know how to play the Hollywood game. And the budget that they wanted to make the film for was way too low. And so I said to them, I said, look, if you can't raise enough money to make the film that it really deserves to be, I'm not interested. And I think that Richard liked that. And that kind of cemented our relationship for the future.
Yes. Well, last week we watched Grease Lightning, and you talked about the fact that you thought the film we're about to see, Which Way Is Up, was going to be Richard Pryor's introduction as a leading man, but then he took Grease Lightning before that.
The dirty dog. Yeah. After Car Wash, Steve Krantz, the producer, asked me, what else I would like to do. And I said, well, I'm not sure, but there's so much Black talent that is not being given a platform. And he said, well, like who? And I said, well, like Richard Pryor, for example. He didn't even know who Richard Pryor was. So, but he went off and came back a couple of weeks later, and he said, have you ever seen this movie called The Seduction of Mimi? It's an Italian movie made by a brilliant female director named Lina Wertmuller. So I watched the movie and I said, oh, Richard he'd play this in his sleep. And so he made a deal with Lina Wertmuller to do an American adaptation. And I got Richard involved. And then as we were developing the script, I realized he could play his father and he could play the bootleg preacher. He could play multiple roles, and that would allow him to kind of display his comedic genius, which he had developed in his stand-up. And so I was designing the film for everything that made Richard great.
Yeah, we think of him now as such a groundbreaking artist in terms of making that transition from stand-up to movies. I mean, he becomes just box office gold. And a generation before Eddie Murphy is playing every character in The Nutty Professor, or Tyler Perry is playing multiple characters, Richard Pryor is doing it in this film.
Exactly. And it brought audiences that wouldn't be sitting in the same theater together to enjoy that human experience.
Yes. Well, let's take a look at this film. Thank you, Michael.
It's great talking. It's going to be even more fun watching.
Yes, and discussing it after. So stay right there. Let's take a look. Here is Which Way Is Up? Back here to discuss Which Way Is Up is the film's director, Michael Schultz.
Let's get into it.
Yes. I mean, there is some broad, farcical stuff happening, a lot of strong language in this film, as we might expect from a Richard Pryor film.
Right.
But there's also a really important political message and a message about integrity. So could you talk about what you wanted to get across in terms of this film story?
Fundamentally, it's about the corruption of an individual who's going for the money and going for the sex, and in that pursuit loses everything of value. And in the midst of his own personal ascent and fall is the story of how the big business and the mob, if you will, kind of crushes the little guy.
I really appreciate the way this film shows the importance of unity between Black and brown people. I don't think we see that enough in film.
I don't think we had seen it before this movie, because again, drawing from real life, El Teatro Campesino was a theater group that I incorporated into the film. So these guys were real frontline agitprop people who were trying to make a difference. So they agreed to be in the film, which was the greatest thing ever. And putting Richard in that environment was just perfect. And the film was shot by the great John Alonzo, Chicano DP. The combination of Alonzo, El Teatro Campesino, and Richard Pryor and his group, it was just a completely joyful experience every day. And my hardest job on this movie was trying to keep the crew and the cast from laughing. Because Richard was just in his highest creative, free-spirited mode of being. And I didn't have to direct him. All I had to do was point him in certain directions. But I think he had more fun making this movie than any movie in his career. And it was such an uplifting experience for everybody involved.
Well, we've talked a lot about Richard Pryor, but of course there are some really remarkable women in the cast of this film as well.
Absolutely. Lynette McKee, Margaret Avery, and Marilyn Coleman, who I had worked with in several projects. Brilliant actresses, bold. I just loved working with all of them, and they were so completely different.
I think my favorite scene in this film is when Richard Pryor is chasing Lynette McKee, or trying to keep up with her jogging, and his body just gives out. I don't know how anybody could keep a straight face around him.
Exactly. There are some satirical gems in this.
I also want to ask you about the theme song for this film, Which Way Is Up?
Which Way Is Up?
Which I still hear on the radio all the time by Stargard. Very importantly, produced by Norman Whitfield.
I conscripted him to give me a theme song. He was platforming a new girl group, Stargard. Norman was great. The tunes that he wrote for Motown are as vibrant and alive today as they were then.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Michael, for discussing and making this film.
It's great fun.
We have another one coming up, so stay right here. We're going to watch Crush Groove next.
Hey.
Next on TCM, Crush Groove. Then, Within Our Gates. And later, Oscar Michaud, the superhero of Black filmmaking. Silent Speak on TCM tonight.